All right, guys, I got quite a bit of feedback on that previous video talking about seller financing. So what I want to talk about is another strategy that's definitely related to you understanding their position, and that is buying the house subject to the existing mortgage. So when you're meeting with a seller, the first thing you need to find out after you've got the idea of what the property looks like, how much it will cost to repair, what the after repair value is, the other things that you need to do is see, well, what is their situation? What is their position? In other words, do they own the house free and clear? Is there a mortgage? So now, on our previous video, we discussed a situation where it's free and clear and you would go for a seller financing option. Let's talk now about a situation where they have a mortgage. So if they have a mortgage, the number one question you want to ask is, are you current on your mortgage? Are you making your mortgage payments on time? And if the answer is yes, which it often is, unless it's a foreclosure, then the next question would be, well, tell me a little bit about your mortgage. How much do you owe on it? What's the principal amount that you still owe? How much do you have left on your mortgage? In other words, if it was a 30-year mortgage and they did it 10 years ago, there's 20 years left. And then what is the interest rate on the mortgage? And what is your monthly payment? And then does that monthly payment include taxes and insurance? All right. Now, this is a strategy that works really well in the market that we're in right now in 2023. And the reason is this. Anybody that bought a house, let's say 2021, 2022, could be 10 to 15% underwater right now. They may want to get out of that house. It could be because they got an offer in another state that they have to relocate to. It could be for other reasons. But one thing they may have that came along with the purchase of that house is a really low 2.78 or 3% mortgage. And that's where buying the house subject to can be really, really creative, because you may be able to buy that house and take over that mortgage at, let's say, 2.75% or 3%, and then simply make the payments on that mortgage. So first thing you got to find out is, let's say, using an example, I'll use a round number like our previous seller financing example. You got a $200,000 house. You went in there, you told them $120,000 cash. Absolutely not. That's never going to work. I need to get at least $170,000. Okay, so we're looking at it. Well, let me ask you this. So do you have a mortgage on this house? Yes, I do. How much do you owe on the mortgage? Well, I owe $150,000. I said, all right, so if you sold this house at $170,000 with closing costs and everything else, let's say you netted $160,000 and you owe $150,000 to the bank, so really you're looking at walking away with $10,000, right? Yes. Okay, well, I tell you what, how about I buy your house, I give you $10,000, and I simply take over the existing mortgage. And then what you're doing essentially is they're transferring the deed to the property to your name, but the mortgage is actually in their name, all right? And there is something in mortgages called a due on sale clause. I'm not going to go into that in this video, just something I do want to make you aware of. And there are many ways creative of getting around that. But basically the concept is essentially you just go and ask them, okay, give me your coupon book, or let me log into your online portal, see what your monthly payments are, including taxes and insurance. And if that number is reasonable, and this is very important, if you're looking to buy rental properties, and if you can cash flow, let's say their mortgage payment's $1,100 all in and you can rent it out for $2,000, then this is a great way to buy their property. And once again, just like with seller financing, you may be in a situation where they start wanting to play with those numbers. Well, I don't want to get 10, I want to walk away with 15, I want to walk away with 20. Okay, well, if we're going to do that, then let's work something else into the mix, right? So you can be very, very creative with it by stretching it out and taking the amount that you're going to give them. So instead of, let's say, I'm going to give you $10,000 or $20,000 upfront cash, I'm going to pay you $5,000 down, and then I'm going to give you the balance in installments, right? So you can be very, very creative with that. With seller financing deals that you have under contract, you can keep them yourself as a rental, which I highly recommend. But you can also wholesale them to other people and collect an assignment fee as long as you have that on your original contract. If you're looking to accumulate a lot of rentals, in other words, if you want to pick up 100 houses, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that the conventional way, where a mortgage broker is going to require on investment property 25% down. So on a $200,000 house, that's going to be $50,000. If you want to buy 100 houses, that is a lot of money to have to come up with. It's not realistic for most people to be able to come up with that. However, if you can go and buy those houses and you can persuade someone to sell their house where you're taking over the mortgage payment, and let's say instead of giving them $20,000 down, you're giving them nothing. You say, well, how would you do that? Very simply. They're looking to get $170 for their house, and initially you said, I'll give you $20 down and you owe $150 on the house. Well, what if you had the same scenario and you offered them $155 on the house and they're owed $150 to the bank? Now it would only be $5,000 down. Or what if they had a mortgage of $170 and they were looking to get $170 and they're looking to walk away from it without having to come out of pocket any money? Keep in mind, if they were to sell it at $170 with an agent, they'd have a 6% commission and have 3 or 4% in closing costs. So $170 less 10% would knock them down to, what is it, $170 minus 17. So that's $153, I believe, right? So basically they're only going to net $153, but they owe the bank $170. So that'd be minus $17,000, meaning they'd have to actually write a check to the title company at closing to get rid of that property. And now you come along and say, listen, I'll give you that same $170. You don't have to pay the 6% commission. Don't worry about the closing costs. I got you on that. I'm just simply going to buy a house. I'm going to cover everything, and I'm going to take over your payments. So in a scenario like that, they could be very relieved when they say, look, we got away from this. We sold our house. Someone else is going to take over the payments. Now you go and put a tenant in there. You rent that house out, and you essentially just bought that house for no money down. That's how you can pick up 100 or more houses. All right. So in this market, learning how to buy houses subject to is key, because anyone who bought in the last year or year and a half is probably 10 to 15% underwater, and they also probably have a nice low interest rate mortgage. So tap into that by learning how to buy houses subject to. We do teach the creative financing options a lot at our foreclosures boot camp, so make sure you look into that and attend that if you can. So just a tip for you guys, make sure in this market in 2023 that you are focusing on creative financing options like buying a house subject to the existing mortgage. All right, guys. So if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.